I'm Amy Pat T. Colvin, and I love thinking about and talking about and sharing ideas around energy flow in the body. I frame it as Qigong and compassion for self, for others. And I'm here with my friend Heather, who will introduce herself in a minute. And we're just having a series of spontaneous conversations that we wanted to share with you.
My name's Heather Scott, and I have an area of interest that I feel complements Amy, and that is that I care very much about people taking care of themselves in important ways so that when they're nurtured, they can go out into the world and feel fantastic and make an impact. And so we're having these conversations because we have different topics that we've discussed before, and we're going to explore them here.
And so today I want to talk about, and we, before we hit the record button, we were just talking about all kinds of things. And it's like, man, we could put that in the conversation. We could put this in the conversation. But I want to talk about the fact that our brains have this really cool filtration system. And until I learned it, I never even thought about it. So just to kick it off, imagine this. So at every given moment, our eyes are able to look at, respond to, or look at, sense like 2 million bits of data. Imagine super fast. Wow. And our brains really only process 126 of those 2 million bits. So it's like, well, what happens to the rest of it? And that's where this ability for our brains to filter stuff out comes into play. So, like, remember in our very first conversation when we were defining compassion, and I said at any given moment, there are so many things that we could be aware of that are distressing in the world, and that if we actually leaned into and absorbed and felt all of those distressing things, we would just be this pile of goo. And that, so there's that awareness bit. And so we have to filter things out. And then the rest of that compassion thing was being emotionally moved by what we're aware of and then choosing to take action. But for now, let's just talk for a little while about this whole cool thing that our brain does, which is filter out all kinds of stuff so that the right stuff that we want or that we have taught our brain is valuable comes in.
Yes, the intentionality around this, I think, is has a lot of potential for benefiting people who are curious about this because setting an intention, I think, is so powerful. If I'm intentionally looking for the good, the red car, whatever it is, I think it's an interesting thing to learn about, but also to play with.
Yeah. So let's go back to that red car thing. So I mean, you know it, Heather, because you learned a little bit about it during Body, Mind, Intelligence, because that's an example that I use there. But what Heather means by that red car is, let's say you wanted to go buy a new car, or let's flip it around. So for example, I know that you're now in the market for a new dishwasher. And whenever you go into like a big box store, it could be Home Depot, it could be Costco, it could be Lowe's, it could be whatever is true in your community. My guess is you're going to notice those dishwashers way more than you noticed the dishwashers before. And that's because you've told your brain, I'm looking for a dishwasher. So the same is true if you're going to buy a car. And I've got these little cute light dots going by my face, but that's okay. Um, if you're looking for a car, you might be thinking, oh, I'm interested in buying a sedan and I would like it to be red. So you suddenly start seeing more red sedans out on the road and you completely don't notice all the silver trucks. But does that mean there's more red sedans and less silver trucks? No, it just means that your brain is watching for that more. And, you know, for anybody who's listening, just think about that for a minute. Think about anything in your life where that might be true. So, for example, I live in a place where there's a lot of bald eagles, and I know that typically there are more here in the winter. So, I naturally look out my window and I'm more aware of seeing them fly by because it's like, oh, it's winter. I know there's going to be eagles here. Oh, look, there is one.
Mhm. Well, and it goes to the noticing bit too. So anybody who's lived in a house with other people um, realizes that, sometimes I walk into my kitchen and I see, oh, there are two pots and pans that need to be washed. And if someone else in my household walks into my kitchen, they might just see, oh, there's a fresh loaf of bread on the counter. I'm going to make myself a peanut butter and jam sandwich. Both of those things are there. It's what you come in focusing on that you're actually going to see. And I think that this aspect, the number of times I used to laugh, my grandmother had this thing where she'd leave something on the stairs so that the next person going up the stairs would take it up with them. And it would sit there because nobody else was looking to take it up the stairs until there's sort of the, hey, if there's something on the stairs, please take it to the top of the landing when you go. That might even take a few times because the intention my grandmother had was saving herself a trip or, grouping things together and not going up and down all the time. But if the other people in the household weren't apprised of this intention, then they're not even able to notice it. They're just going up the stairs with their own focus in mind. So I think that the intentionality is fun to play with, and the ability to notice, I think, is connected in some way. What do you think?
I agree with that 100%. And the other thing that just kind of bubbled up for me that I hadn't maybe necessarily thought to add into the mix is expectations.
Oh,
So there's my attention filter is set in a certain way. Your attention filter is set in a certain way. Fortunately, apparently, both of us look at the dirty pots and pans when we go into the kitchen, and the people we live with don't notice those. Or maybe that's unfortunate, but it's a
yeah.
nice reinforcement for me to
Feels
go,
like it feels like a whole other conversation. I feel like
right. But with this example of your grandmother having the aspiration that I put things on the stairs, someone else will take it up and save myself a trip. Not that I'm too lazy to do it, but we're all part of this functioning household. Let's make it happen. If she never told that aspiration to anybody else, like you said, nobody would get it. And yet, I wonder if she had an expectation that this should happen. And was she disappointed that her expectation wasn't met because she didn't happen to tell anybody else how her thought processes worked?
yes, and that actually, so when we're talking about the programming of our brains as to what we notice, um, circling back to the conversation we had about self-care, oftentimes when I'm in a coaching situation with someone who hasn't been taking much care of themselves, often they will say, no one in my family is helping me, with these tasks. And the reality is that without communicating openly what the expectations are, what I will often do is I will often flip it and say, okay, so your expectations of these other members of the house will do this, this, and this. You can get curious about whether that conversation's been had, whether that's been agreed to, what kind of agreements have been made. But the other thing is, what what have you chosen for yourself? Because that impacts the lens through which people view others. So if I have been neglecting what I need and I'm focusing and I'm focusing and I'm focusing, it's very easy for me to get disgruntled pretty quickly. And what I'll often do is say, when was the last time you took some time for yourself? And it's usually like, well, what do you even mean? Because sometimes when you get focused on service to others or, things functioning well, efficiencies, I love efficiency. And sometimes the best choice isn't the most efficient choice. Sometimes gearing down or taking a pause is actually going to serve everything else better.
Right, right. And then part of that thing that makes you Heather and that's your life way is that you've trained your brain to value that. And so, thinking back to like you've gone through my body, mind, intelligence transformation system, and we talk a lot about the reticular activating system, this attention filter, and the fact that our brains are working about 5% of the time, and 95% of our time, the body and the subconscious are in control. And so, in that 5% of the time, we can choose where we want our attention to go. And so, you can choose how you want to respond to people responding to you. You can choose what you set yourself up for with expectations. And one thing that people tend to reflect back to me is that generally seem pretty happy. And I had to work at that. My young life, I was not generally really happy. But and I would never have thought about it from, oh, this is an attention filter thing. But what I realize now is that it is an attention filter, and especially, and you may find this true in your life too, I've noticed that people who pay a lot of attention to doom scrolling the news or people with a negative outlook, you start seeing nothing more than doom. And I was thinking about it this morning and that I thought it was so funny that the actual term for these algorithms, like especially on Facebook, it's a feed. Somebody was saying, "Oh, my feed is filled with blah blah." And it's like feed, that's what you're eating, that's what you're ingesting. And I don't see any of that on Facebook because I've never gone down that rabbit hole. I mean, I think that the algorithms and things like Facebook and YouTube are astonishing, but I also think they're really not great. That's a really lame
Yeah,
word, but
no, I get what you're saying, and it's goes back to intentionality. So I I saw a post. There's a woman that I follow. She's located on the east coast of Canada, and she's just a lovely soul. And she said she posted something about social media, and it was about, if you can focus on what it is you want, then there's the positivity that feeds back to you. And it's always a debate to me because I have a very nice feed. When I go into social media, I know what I'm consuming, and I'm consuming things that fuel me, that nurture me. And it was so cute because she was sort of questioning people in this post. And I said, "Oh, that's one of the main reasons I have social media is to get inspirational quotes, to see beautiful pictures, expand my appreciation of nature in other parts of the world. I have yet to travel, to stay connected to people who that's where they post baby pictures now, like that kind of thing." Um, but the other thing I wanted to share, and I did this a few times this week. So I was gifted a card deck for Christmas. And so I was shuffling. It's called I Am. And it's all of these I Am statements, which I think are very powerful, very intentional. And so the last few days, I've picked cards. And to me, that is me programming my reticular brain as to what I'm going to look for. So the first card I picked was I Am Peace. And it was quite cute because I was like, I am peace. And then I got curious. I was like, well, what else am I? So I was going to pick another card. It was blank because they have some blank cards there that you can customize. And I was like, okay, there's a blank card. And then I was like, well, I still am curious. What am I? I'm peace, but what else? Another blank card. I'm like, okay, I'm just peace today. That's all. But then I picked cards the next few days. And when I pick, I am mindful, when I'm doing the dishes in my kitchen, I'm bringing something that I chose, something that I'm choosing to incorporate into my life, and I'm bringing it to the dishes. I am mindful. Now, that's a choice. I could be resentful of the dishes. I mean, very much a choice there. But I think that you bringing this technology forward in your course, in this conversation, I'm curious how you'll tag this conversation so that it can be for those curious about brain function and neuro-linguistic programming, all those sorts of things. But yeah, it's fun to play with, and it's a we are powerful. I think we are very powerful.
And I think that it's really delightful that something as simple as choosing where you want to place your intention augments that power. We are very powerful people, and it's up to us to choose. So, one of the things that you and I have done together is vision board work. We do that in Body, Mind, IntelliSense. And I'm looking at my vision board now, and I
It's right
teach
there.
it in a way that isn't just, oh, here's some pretty pictures. Here's, just put it up there, blah, blah. There is some very intentional actions that you could choose to integrate into your everyday life. And I look at this vision board that I put together. The one I have with me right now is, maybe this is the one that I just did most recently, but there's some elements on there that are the same as when I did it a year-ish ago. And it's fun to see what is actually coming to fruition. So, there's an element around the tours that I lead that was on my vision board that is coming true. There was an element around being a facilitator for a specific platform that I've been humming and hawing with for like, oh gosh, a year and a half now. And I finally just hit send on the application. And
Congratulations.
thank you. And,
Hooray.
but it really just ties back to what is that? What is my intention? What is my choice? And allowing my attention filter, my reticular activation system, my attention filter, to be open to these things coming in. So,
Yes.
for example, thinking about what you might have put on your vision board, is there anything there that you've been attending to, that you've been paying attention to, that you might not have a couple of years ago?
The board that I created in Body, Mind, Intelligence last year was very responsive to the year before. So the year before had some significant things. This board was sort of like a bounce back version, and it was like, oh. And for me, part of creating that board last year was, you know, do I actually have permission to create my own board? Can I step into, these are things I want, these are things I'm intentionally choosing. And I will also just put in here that where I put my vision board made a huge difference for me last year, and that came out of the course. So I chose to put it in a high traffic location that I see all the time, and it was part of the power of it. What I notice as I assess it, which you just asked me to do, a lot came through last year. A lot materialized. I realized some of these things. And for the most part, most of the things I put on that board are not one and done. They are like a continuum. So what I chose, and I generally don't do these at the new year, but I chose around that time that I would not be ditching this board. This board is not done. I'm just going to augment. I'm going to add to this board. And so it's actually sitting right here because I'm going to add more to it. There are things that I'm leaving behind. So more intentionality, not only what you pull in, but intentionality as to what you offload.
If you happen to be watching it at the end of January, early February of 2026, we're shifting out of a wood snake year where it was all about kind of curling in and ruminating and planning and thinking and
Shedding.
and then yes, and then shedding the stuff that doesn't serve us. And especially right now, as we have these 3 or 4 weeks before we hit into the new year, which is the year of the fire horse, where it's going to be active and vibrant and dynamic and bright. If we haven't shed the stuff that doesn't serve us, all of that is going to act as fuel to this fire for the fire horse, and it could end up feeling like burnout. It could end up feeling like overwhelm. So this is actually another really great opportunity to think about and be attentive to where you're focusing your attention. So if you perceive that the world is a bad and scary place and everything is going to go to hell in a handbasket, then that's what you're going to see. That's all the feedback you're going to get is that the world is a scary place. It's awful. It's overwhelming. It's horrible. And it's just going to get worse and worse and worse. But if you choose to go, yeah, there's chaos going around out there, but I choose to be stable. I choose to look for the good. I see beauty in everyday life. That kind of messaging, that kind of information is going to be what comes in through that filter because you've made that choice. And when you choose to do that as you're moving into this new fire year, it can be dynamic and bold and creative instead of overwhelming and destructive.
I have noticed, and this goes to intentionality and focus for me as well, is that in the past few weeks I've had some challenges pop up, and what it feels like is this old belief that you have when this sort of thing happens. Do you still want that old belief? And I'm like, no. Another opportunity to shed and choose to believe something different, to choose to tell myself something different. And I've done so much shedding and so much releasing and so much, no, not this, no, not that. I noticed in the last week or so, I feel almost bored. And I don't feel bored. I always have things that are nurturing me, things that I'm curious about, things that I'm active on. But I've been experimenting with interacting with that judgment or assessment of boredom to say, oh, I think I'm just being quite effective in offloading a lot of these energy drains. And now I more or less feel sort of like readiness. So I've been changing it from I have nothing going on. I'm not to oh, this is like a fertile land that is cultivated for stuff to grow in. So I watched that if I had chosen to be critical, self-critical, which is one of the things I'm dropping, is I would have been, oh, I really don't have much going on. Oh, I maybe I should get something going. No, I'm setting the intention and I'm waiting. And that is very new for me because I've spent most of my life, let's make something happen. Let's get out there. And so sometimes these differences, or if it feels a little bit off, what I'm experimenting with is maybe that's an opportunity for my growth personally.
And you know what pops up for me is in this, oh, I could be bored. And it's like, well, no, no, I'm going to reframe that. It is, I am peace.
It is.
I mean, that's a perfect illustration of what peace could feel like and might feel like for you. It's like, yes, you're setting this ground for um, new things to grow, and at the
Yes.
same time, it's peace. Um,
Yes.
and this is really interesting. I'm glad you brought that up because, and then we'll wrap this up pretty quick. But a while back, I was working with a coach, and by nature, I am very much of a doer and a goer, and I'm a Virgo, and it's like, give me those lists, let me have those things. I love travel planning, I love writing content. Um, and she came up with this great two-sided metaphor. And on one side, I'm like the girl at the coffee cart, shining up the cart. Let me make your espresso. What do you want? Isn't it going to be, let me help you have a better day. Go, 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 do, do, do. Low level, well, skimming the surface kind of stuff. And then the opposite side of that metaphor is being the nurturing orchardist who has this beautiful orchard of, in my case, I chose peaches,
Hmm.
where it's seasonal and you can't make the trees grow any faster or the fruit produce any faster by standing there, yelling at the tree or petting its bark, you know. And it was just perfect because in that moment in time really needed someone to say, no, you're like, wah, it's time to go. Ah. And this was, gee, 4 or 5 years ago. And I still occasionally think back to that because I still have to work at that. Because like you, I'm like, let's get it done. Let's get it done. And it's like, no, no, it's okay to do nothing today.
Yes. You know what I heard the other day is that rest is productive.
Yes.
That feels absolutely revolutionary in today's world. But I
Yes.
so appreciate that we got a chance because, so let's just pull it back to the reticular filtration system. So I am choosing to view my quiet, calm, peaceful life as a positive starting ground for my year to come, as opposed to what I think I've almost always done, and mostly unconsciously, is, well, it seems really quiet. Like I need to like start some things. No, I can wait.
Yeah.
And that feels intentional, but it feels like I'm personally growing to consider a different way, to consider a different speed, to consider that yelling at the trees isn't going to make them ripen the peaches any faster. Bless
Right.
our hearts. Look at us, so cute.
Yeah, no, and that's really it's really interesting and I love these conversations and I'll just wrap it up with one more observation that it's just come to me through this conversation. I really loved being a student and I was really a very good student. And part of what made me a good student is that I never procrastinated. Oh, I need to get this thing done. Okay, let me start working on this thing. And right now, I know that I have some things that I want to get done before the launch of Body, Mind, Intelligence on February 24th of this year, 26. I have this set of things that I want to get done. And I'm just like, it's the weekend. I could do nothing. I could go out on this beautiful sunny day and do, even though it's crisp and cold, I could go do some work in the yard. But the good student in me is like, get it done, get it done, get it done, get it done. But I think that there's a couple things going on here. One, that's the way my attention filter is set up at the moment, get it done. But I'm looking forward to a pause in the action starting at the end of February where I can then be in this moment of peace. I can then move into that year of the fire horse with grace and quietude and right thinking instead of frantically trying to get it all done. So there's that interesting juxtaposition between do I stick with get it done, get it done, get it done, knowing that I have an aspiration towards peace moving forward, or do I meet that out a little bit? And, I think for me today, I'm going to get it done. But it'll be interesting that, to have another conversation with you down in a week or so about, okay, did you slow it down? Did that getting it done serve you? Do you see a light at the end of the tunnel? I don't know.
Yeah. And the beauty of all of that is your awareness.
Yeah.
So it's no longer a default, it's a conscious, thoughtful choice where you get to say, so I'm aware that I'm a really good student and I operate this way. What will I now choose? So I love and thank you for this conversation and thank you for sharing a little bit more about our filtration system that we can curate.
Yeah, you're welcome. And I look forward to talking to you the next time. Have a
Sounds good.
great afternoon today.
You too, Amy. Thanks.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.